So we're going to read this article of African leaders and their thirst for power. This is going to explain a little bit about African leaders and why Africa has been such a difficult continent for leaders to prevail in, why so many of the countries in Africa have had difficulty. This is going to take the stance of focusing on more of the negative leadership that happens there, which will explain some of the short stories that we're getting ready to read. So I'll start this article. The issue of leadership and governance in Africa raises more questions than answers. It is tragic that many leaders have failed in their duties. It has been argued in a maxim that a country gets the leaders it deserves. Africa's case is, however, mind-boggling. It is shrouded in mystery, political intrigue, and an unrivaled trail of governance accidents. One wonders what ails our leaders, making most selfish, merciless, greedy, corrupt, power-hungry, and human rights abusers. Ideally, leaders should be caretakers or stewards who steer the people towards collective prosperity. But on attaining power, most African leaders become deities. They seek to be worshipped by the people they lead. They consequently lose touch with the electorate and do absurd things with far-reaching consequences. One common method the leaders use to cement their godlike status is acquire lengthy titles and other symbols of honor to separate themselves from the masses. So let's pause for a second and talk about this. What they're saying is that many of the leaders in Africa have been selfish, merciless, greedy, corrupt, and power-hungry. And when they get the power, instead of being caretakers and stewards for the people, instead they want to make themselves become like gods. They want to be worshipped. And one of the ways they do this is by giving themselves special titles. So in the story that we're going to read, The Man, you'll see that the author satirizes this idea by giving the leader this insanely long name. Several literary writers have examined this power syndrome. They have few kind words for this worship me disease that mostly infects the leaders in the third world. Congolese writer E.B. Dongala, in his short story, The Man, satirizes a rogue leader in an unnamed country. Dongala sarcastically describes the leader and country's names allotation, such as invincible, infallible, and worthy of great honor. One description reads, this is the title the guy has given himself, beloved father of the nation, the supreme and enlightened guide, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces and beneficent genius of mankind. So, E.B. Dongala is the author who wrote a short story called The Man, which we will be reading. And in that, he satirizes the idea of these long titles to make the leaders godlike. So, talking about that same leader in that same short story. The same leader is further described as the founding father of the nation, the president for life, commander-in-chief of the armed forces, and beloved father of the people. Although these generous praise names are satirical, they still reflect reality, where one leader holds so many titles and posts. It is despicable that a leader would hold so many posts in a country that has talented, educated, and able-bodied people. Leadership by a sole individual only results in grave mistakes, which translate into misery for the ruled majority. Chinua Achebe, in A Man of the People, also talks of the numerous praise names for a prime minister character. They include the tiger, the lion, the one and only, the sky, and the ocean. Achebe says in one of his short stories that most third world leaders use their office to amass wealth and honorary degrees among others. Kenya's Njui wa Thonglai in Wizard of the Crow, two ridiculous rogue leaders. He narrates about a character named the Ruler who has no other name. He says the ruler had sat on the throne for so long he could not even remember when his reign began. Many African leaders dread leaving office and cling to power at the expense of the masses. So what they've just described right here is that it's just insane that a leader would hold all of those offices instead of delegating to other able-bodied people in the country. When one person rules everything, it's only their ideas, and that causes problems for most of the people. Some other authors, so that was Dongola wrote about it, but Achebe also wrote about it in several stories, and by giving the leaders these names, the sky, the ocean, the lion, the one and only, the ruler, we're giving them all of the power. And they're sort of making fun of it, but they're showing that it really is at the expense of all of the other people. The Nujui gives the Swahili words like Mtukufu Rais, which depicts the leader as worthy of praise. This is then changed to titles like Mkufu Matufi, his holy mightiness, which is both wild and untenable. Power, maxim goes, corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Depots, oligarchs, and autocrats have ruined many countries around the world. So having one person who has all of the power only corrupts things and causes trouble. And that's what it's talking about here. Nigerian Nobel laureate Wole Soyinka laments in his memoir, "You must set forth at dawn on the abuse of power by the late dictator Sani Achebe. In mourning the execution of fellow writer Ken Saro-Wiwa in 1995, he writes, power had mounted the head of the dictator. It needed its periodic nourishment in blood. Soyinka describes Achebe as a monster that had reduced Nigerians collectively into a plantation of slaves. He says leaders drunk with power have little regard for human life because they kill and maim with glee. And this is actually something you are going to see when we read The Man. You're going to see this leader who has all sorts of power, and because of all that power, he has no regard for the human life of the people that he is supposed to be ruling and taking care of. Africa's leadership tragedy deserves serious attention. Leaders should realize people who give them a chance to lead do so because they hold them in trust. These lessons offered by our writers, thinkers, and philosophers should be taken seriously. It's a privilege to be a leader, and leaders should put self-interest behind the agenda of the people who elect them. Any person who negates this rule is unworthy of holding any leadership position. Leaders must endeavor to offer selfless services and not pursue personal interests like wealth and power and honor at the expense of the people they are supposed to lead. The Man by E.B. Dongola, and On Market Day by Kylo Mativo. Background. So here's some background on two short stories we may read. The Man by E.B. Dongola. We've already talked about this one just briefly. So Dongola is a poet, novelist, and short story writer from the Congo. He is described as one of Africa's leading satirists. He spent his childhood and adolescence in the Congo. He then went abroad to study science, first to the USA, then to Montpellier in France, where he obtained his doctorate. He is now professor of chemistry at the University of Brazzaville. He has published one novel, this is it, in 1973, and a collection of stories entitled This in 1982, which has been banned in the Congo. The Man is taken from this collection. Dongola's novel, This, I think here's what it is translates to English, A Gun in the Hand, a Poem in the Pocket, was published in 1973, and it won this prize. It satirized party members and the official scientific Marxism ideology of the Congo. This was followed by a collection of short stories, Jazz and Palm Wine, published in 1982. The stories draw on Dongola's experiences as a student in the U.S. and France, as well as providing further satirical comment on contemporary Congolese political matters. Jazz and palm wine has been formally banned by the official censorship commission in Brazzaville. It is unobtainable in bookstores there. The local Cercle Culturel Francois is forbidden to display it on its shelves. However, Dongola has himself not been subjected to any restrictive measures in his work, administrative responsibilities, or freedom movement. So because of his writing, which criticized the government, his books have been banned in the Congo. Can't sell his book where he lives. The Man is a light satire, the use of humor, irony, exaggeration, and/or ridicule to expose or criticize people's stupidity or vices, especially with politics. So this is the definition of satire right here. So he uses light satire on the state of some African countries where independent fighters made themselves life presidents. Imagine that, a life president. So once they're in, they don't go anywhere until they're dead, right? So these presidents, even after claiming 100% popularity, still live in barricaded castles far removed from the very people that they serve. And in their newly acquired positions, they become conduit to wealth gathering. So they start gathering all this money and everything, and they take themselves away from the people that they're supposed to be serving. In the Man, founder, father of the nation, the enlightened guide and savior, beloved father of the people, surrounds himself with an impregnable security. One of his many disgruntled subjects manages to get by and slay him. A prolonged pursuit of the Man ensues, in which terrible vengeance is exacted on his perceived sympathizers. The new leader is even more security conscious, even though he has released a decree proclaiming himself to be unkillable and immortal. So imagine the president decides that he's going to label himself unkillable and immortal, like he's going to live forever. So this is what The Man is about. And then this one is what On the Market Day is about. It's a post-colonial order is under scrutiny in On Market Day. Here, the state disassociates itself from the poverty spawned by a 2-year drought, dismissing both as phenomena against which man is powerless. Aspiring election candidates offer the usual empty promises of change. The long-suffering villager gambles his savings on a cow which turns out to be sick and dies. So this story, along with The Man, really focuses on how the state or the government disassociates itself from the people, from the poverty and everything that happens in the town. They just completely disassociate themselves and say, you know what, those things happen, man can't do anything about it. When meanwhile, the person who's in charge should be doing something about it. Hopefully this helps as you answer the questions for your crossword puzzle.